Have you ever felt that void? That uncomfortable space within you that seems like nothing can fill, no matter how many achievements you accumulate, how many relationships you have, or how hard you try to please others, that emptiness remains, silent but present, like a constant reminder that something fundamental is missing in your life. Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant analytical psychologists in history, discovered something amazing about this void that we all experience at some point. It's not a defect. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is, in fact, a powerful invitation from the soul to awaken your true inner strength. Think about it for a moment. When was the last time you really stopped and listened to that emptiness? Most of us do everything possible to ignore it. We fill it with constant distractions, with overwork, with superficial relationships, with ambitions that aren't really ours. We run from one place to another, occupying every minute of our day, just to avoid that moment of silence where the void might make itself heard. Jung understood that this behavior isn't coincidental. It's our natural resistance to facing what he called the encounter with the soul. Because in that void, there isn't just discomfort, there's a transformative potential that can be frightening. It's the space where your true self waits to be recognized. Have you wondered why you've been feeling so exhausted lately? Why, despite doing everything right, according to external standards, you still feel unsatisfied? Jung would say you're experiencing the toll of ignoring your soul, disconnecting from your inner truth to satisfy others' expectations. The modern world is designed to keep you in that disconnection. Social media, the culture of immediate success, constant comparisons, everything pushes you to seek external validation. Jung observed how his patients came to his office, trapped in lives that seemed perfect on the outside, but left them completely empty inside. People who had followed all the right steps but felt they were living a life that didn't belong to them. The fascinating thing is that Jung discovered that this void is not the enemy, but the portal to your true strength. It's the sacred space where the unconscious tries to communicate with you, showing you which parts of yourself you've abandoned along the way. That feeling that something is missing isn't a lack. It's your soul reclaiming the parts you've sacrificed on the altar of social acceptance. Think of all the times you've said yes when you wanted to say no. All the occasions when you've silenced your intuition to follow the safe path. Every moment you've ignored a passion because it seemed impractical or because someone important in your life disapproved of it. These small abandonments accumulate over time, creating that void you now feel. Jung developed the concept of the shadow, those parts of ourselves that we repress because they don't fit with the image we want to project. The more we reject aspects of our nature, the more power we give them in the unconscious. And that power doesn't disappear. It transforms into that inexplicable void, into that feeling of being incomplete despite having everything. Have you noticed how you feel when you finally do something that deeply resonates with your being? That moment where time seems to stop, where you feel a clarity and energy that seem to come from an inexhaustible source. Jung called these moments synchronicity, when your inner and outer worlds align perfectly. They are glimpses of what your life could be if you had the courage to fully embrace who you are. The problem is that many of us confuse who we are with the roles we play. Jung distinguished between the persona, the social mask we wear, and the self, our authentic essence. The more identified we are with our persona, with that external image we've built, the deeper the void becomes. Because the persona can never nourish the soul. It's just an interface for relating to the external world. Jung observed something fascinating in his decades as a therapist. The people who suffered the most weren't necessarily those who had experienced the most trauma or external difficulties. They were those who had lost touch with their inner truth, who had sacrificed their authenticity for security or acceptance. The greatest human suffering, he discovered, comes from living a life that isn't yours. Can you feel the truth of this in your own experience? Think about the decisions you regret the most. They probably aren't the honest mistakes you made following your intuition, but those times when you ignored what you knew deep inside was right for you. those times when you allowed fear of rejection or failure to take you away from your path. Jung firmly believed that this inner void is a sacred invitation. It's the soul saying, there's more for you. There's something more authentic, more aligned with your essence waiting for you, if you have the courage to seek it. The void isn't your enemy. It's the messenger of a deeper truth you've been avoiding. And here's the most transformative part of Jung's teachings. When you finally decide to face that void, when you stop running and start listening to what it has to tell you, you discover that it contains not only pain, but also extraordinary power. It's in that seemingly empty space where your most authentic strength is found. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of integrating all the fragmented parts of yourself into a coherent and authentic whole. It's not an easy path. It requires facing your shadows, questioning limiting beliefs, and sometimes disappointing people who expected you to keep being who you've always been. But the reward is incomparable. A life lived from your center, from your truth, with an inner strength that no one can take away from you. Have you wondered why some people seem to have an unbreakable strength in the face of difficulties, while others collapse under the slightest pressure? Jung discovered that this difference isn't about physical or mental resistance, but about connection with the self, with that authentic core that remains stable even when everything else changes. People who have made the inner journey to connect with that center have access to resources that others simply cannot reach. Think about those people you deeply admire, not for their external achievements or status, but for that intangible quality they possess. That authenticity, that presence, that ability to remain true to themselves even when facing resistance. What you're perceiving in them is precisely what Jung described. Human beings who have had the courage to face their inner void and transform it into authentic strength. Jung observed that this journey follows an archetypal pattern that repeats across all cultures and times. He called it the hero's journey, the process of separation from the known, descent into inner darkness, and transformed return. This pattern appears in myths, fairy tales, religions, precisely because it reflects a deep psychological truth. Real transformation always requires facing the void. Have you noticed how the most difficult crises in your life often precede periods of greatest growth? Jung didn't see this as coincidence. He understood that it's precisely when our external structures collapse, relationships, jobs, beliefs, that space opens for something more authentic to emerge. The painful void that follows a significant loss is the fertile ground where your true strength can be born. But our culture has taught us to fear these empty spaces. It has programmed us to immediately fill any silence, any solitude, any moment of uncertainty. Jung warned about the danger of this automatic reaction. When we rush to fill the void with new relationships, new jobs, or new distractions, we lose the opportunity to hear what that void has to teach us. Here's something crucial that Jung discovered. The void can never be filled from the outside. No matter how many achievements you accumulate, how many relationships you have, or how much recognition you receive, if you haven't done the inner work of connecting with your essence, the void will remain. It's like trying to fill a container that has a hole in the bottom. That's why you see so many successful people who still feel unsatisfied despite having everything. Jung understood that the real work isn't in eliminating the void, but in transforming our relationship with it. Instead of seeing it as an enemy to avoid, we can learn to see it as a sacred space where transformation occurs. It's in that apparent void where new ideas are born, where authentic creativity emerges, where our true nature is revealed. Do you remember any moment in your life where you felt completely lost? Where everything you thought you knew about yourself no longer seemed to apply? Jung called these periods the dark night of the soul, borrowing the term from mystics. They are painful moments, no doubt, but they are also portals to a deeper level of self-knowledge. If you have the courage to remain conscious in that void, instead of escaping from it, you'll discover aspects of yourself that you never imagined. One of Jung's most profound observations was that this inner void isn't really a void in the sense of nothing. It's more like a space full of unmanifested potential, of parts of yourself that have been repressed or ignored. When we finally dare to look inside, we discover that what seemed like a terrifying abyss is actually a treasure of unexplored resources. Think about all the qualities you admire in others, but don't recognize in yourself. Jung would say that these qualities exist within you, but have been relegated to the shadow because at some point in your life, you decided they weren't safe or acceptable. The void you feel is, in part, the call of those qualities seeking to be integrated into your conscious life. Have you wondered why certain characteristics in other people sometimes irritate you so much? Jung discovered something fascinating. What bothers us most in others is often a reflection of what we don't want to see in ourselves. He called it projection, that unconscious mechanism where we project onto others the parts of ourselves that we have rejected. And every time you react disproportionately to someone, it's a golden opportunity to discover more about your own inner void. Jung observed how his patients who had the courage to explore these projections experienced amazing transformations. By reclaiming the projected parts and recognizing them as their own, the void began to fill from within. The energy that was previously spent keeping these parts repressed was freed, resulting in renewed vitality and creativity. Something crucial that Jung discovered is that this work isn't just about looking at the negative in us. It also involves reclaiming our positive potential, what he called the golden shadow. How many times have you felt intimidated by the brilliance, creativity, or charisma of others? Jung would suggest that what really intimidates you is recognizing those same qualities within yourself, waiting to be expressed. Have you noticed how some people seem to have a magnetic strength, a presence that fills the room as soon as they enter? Jung understood that this quality doesn't come from communication techniques or superficial charisma. It comes from internal integration, from people who have done the work of facing their void and transforming it into fullness. They don't need to seek external validation because they have found their source of value within themselves. Jung observed that most problematic relationships have their roots in this unrecognized inner void. When we depend on others to fill our void, we impose an impossible burden on them. No external relationship, however wonderful, can substitute for the essential relationship with yourself. This is perhaps one of Jung's most liberating discoveries. When you stop expecting others to complete you and start nurturing your own inner garden, your relationships transform. Have you ever experienced those relationships where you constantly feel you need more attention, more affirmation, more proof of love? Jung would see this as a clear symptom that you're looking outside for what can only be found within. The void is inviting you to come home, to yourself, but you're trying to fill that space with external presences that can never satisfy that deep need. One of Jung's most revolutionary observations was that this inner void isn't a problem to solve, but a mystery to live. It's not about fixing yourself or becoming a perfect version of yourself. It's about expanding your capacity to contain all your contradictions, your lights and your shadows, in a broader and more authentic totality. Jung saw that the people who suffered the most were those who clung to an idealized image of themselves, rejecting everything that didn't fit with that image. The void is created precisely in that rejection, in that internal fragmentation. True strength comes from the ability to embrace your complete humanity, with all its imperfections and complexities. Have you found yourself repeating the same painful patterns over and over, especially in relationships? Jung called this the compulsion to repeat, that unconscious tendency to recreate situations that reflect our unhealed wounds. But he saw something deeper there. Each repetition is also an opportunity, an attempt by the soul to bring you to awareness of what needs to be integrated. Imagine for a moment that the void you feel isn't your enemy, but your wisest guide. That every time it appears, in the form of dissatisfaction, anxiety, or that feeling that something is missing, it's pointing you exactly to what you need to explore to grow. Would this change your relationship with that discomfort? Could you begin to welcome it as a teacher instead of avoiding it as an adversary? Jung discovered that people who adopted this perspective experienced a beautiful paradox. The more they embraced their void, the less power it had over them. By stopping the fight against that uncomfortable feeling and starting to listen to it with curiosity, they discovered that it contained exactly the message they needed for their next step of growth. One of the most powerful tools Jung offered for this work was connection with dreams. He saw dreams not as simple byproducts of the resting brain, but as direct communications from the unconscious, offering us clues about what our inner void is trying to show us. Have you paid attention to your dreams lately? What messages might they be sending you about the parts of yourself you're ignoring? Jung also greatly valued creativity as a bridge to the unconscious. Art, writing, music, dance, all these forms of expression can help us access that seemingly empty space and discover that it's full of wisdom and resources. When we create from an authentic place, we're in direct dialogue with our deepest self. Have you ever experienced that state of flow, where you feel completely absorbed in a creative activity, where time seems to stop? Jung would recognize this as a moment of perfect communion with your essence, where emptiness and fullness become the same thing. These are glimpses of what's possible when we stop resisting our inner world and begin to collaborate with it. One of Jung's most liberating teachings was that you don't need to know everything to begin this journey. In fact, he insisted on the importance of maintaining what he called a beginner's mind, that openness to the unknown, that willingness to not have all the answers. The ego wants certainties, detailed maps. The soul, on the other hand, invites you on a journey of discovery, where each step is revealed only when you're ready to take it. Jung observed that the people who were most successful in this inner journey weren't necessarily the most intellectual, or those who had studied psychology the most. They were those with the humility to recognize their own void and the courage to explore it without pretending to already know what they would find. This combination of humility and courage is the gateway to your true strength. Are you willing to make that journey? To look directly at that void you've been avoiding and discover that it contains precisely what you've been looking for? Jung believed this is the most important work we do in our lives. It's not just about feeling better or solving practical problems, although these benefits certainly come. It's about recovering your soul, coming home to yourself, discovering that what seemed like a frightening void is actually the source of your most authentic power. And here's something extraordinary that Jung discovered. This work doesn't just benefit you. By having the courage to face your own void and transform it into fullness, you're contributing to the collective healing. Jung called this the collective unconscious, that shared dimension of our psyche where we're all connected. Every time a person makes this inner journey and becomes more complete, more authentic, more vitally themselves, the entire field rises. Think of the people who have most influenced your life, those who have inspired you to be more authentic, braver, more compassionate. What you felt in their presence wasn't just their personality or their external achievements, it was their integrity, that quality that emerges when someone has done the work of integrating their void, of transforming their shadow into light. That's the true strength that Jung invites us to awaken. It's not about a destination you reach once and for all. It's a path, an ongoing process of discovery and transformation. There will be moments when you'll feel you've lost your way, that the void is consuming you. Jung would say these are precisely the most fertile moments where the deepest transformation can occur if you remain present and conscious. Can you give yourself permission to not have all the answers right now? To simply take the next step that presents itself, trusting that the path will reveal itself as you move forward? Jung discovered that this trust in the process, this willingness to surrender to something greater than your conscious ego, is the true essence of faith. Not a blind faith in external dogmas, but a deep trust in the wisdom of your own soul. The void you feel is not the end of your story. It's barely the beginning. It's the invitation to a journey that will take you to the depths of who you are and bring you back transformed, with an inner strength that no one can give you and that no one can take away. It's yours by birthright. You just need the courage to claim it. And now, ask yourself, What would I do today if I had the courage to face my void? What difficult conversation would I have? What decision would I make? What part of myself would I stop hiding? Jung believed that these questions, when we answer them honestly, are the ones that lead us directly to our next step of growth. You're not alone on this path. Every human being who has lived has faced this same challenge, this same call of the soul. Jung dedicated his life to mapping this inner territory, not so that we would have to travel it exactly as he did, but so that we would know it's possible, that others have been there before, that the void can be transformed into fullness. Remember, your void is not your enemy. It's the space where your true strength waits to be awakened. It's the portal to a more authentic, fuller, more vitally yours life. Everything you need to begin this journey is already within you. The question is, are you willing to take the first step? This message has the potential to change lives, including yours. If it has resonated with you, share it with someone who might need it. Sometimes, all we need to find the courage to face our void is to know that we're not alone on that journey. Let me know in the comments which part of this message touched something in you. What aspect of your inner void are you ready to explore? Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to take their own first step. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos where we'll continue exploring these deep truths that have the power to transform not just your life, but your relationship with everything that exists. We're together on this journey. The void you feel is sacred. It contains exactly what you've been looking for, and when you finally have the courage to embrace it, you'll discover that it was always the door to your true strength. See you in the next video.